When the signal died. The galaxy's greatest mystery. For 3,000 years, the Galactic Archive had been humanity's gift to the universe. It was a massive space station floating in neutral space, equidistant from all major civilizations. Inside its crystalline halls were stored the collected knowledge of 47 species, their histories, their sciences, their art, their music, their dreams. The archive was humanity's pride. When humans had first joined the galactic community 500 years ago, they had been the youngest species, the newest members of an ancient club. They had nothing that the older races wanted, no rare resources, no strategic territory, no advanced weapons. But they had offered something else, memory. "We will build a place where nothing is forgotten," Ambassador Sarah Chen had told the Galactic Council. "A sanctuary for knowledge. A library that will outlast empires and preserve the wisdom of every civilization that contributes to it." The other species had been skeptical. The Zalthani, ancient beings who had ruled star systems when Earth was still forming, had dismissed it as naive idealism. The Korthan Empire, with their vast military fleets, had called it a waste of resources. But humanity built it anyway. The archive grew over centuries. Species that had initially refused to participate eventually contributed their records. Wars were fought around it, but by mutual agreement, no weapon was ever fired near its location. It became sacred ground, a neutral zone where even the bitterest enemies could meet in peace. Dr. James Reeves had spent 20 years working in the archive. He was the chief curator, responsible for maintaining the vast collection and helping visitors navigate its endless corridors. At 63, with gray hair and tired eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, he had dedicated his entire adult life to this place. He loved every moment of it. On the morning everything changed, James was cataloging a new contribution from the Villani, musical recordings from their first interstellar voyage. The haunting melodies filled his office, and he smiled as he carefully entered the metadata into the archive system. Then the lights went out. Complete darkness. The kind that never happened on a station with triple redundant power systems. James reached for his communicator. "Engineering, this is Reeves. What's going on?" "Static." The emergency lights flickered on, bathing everything in red. James stood up, his heart beginning to race. In 20 years, he had never seen the emergency system activate. He made his way to the command center, passing other staff members who looked as confused as he felt. The archive housed 3,000 people from dozens of species, all dedicated to preserving knowledge. None of them knew what was happening. The command center was chaos. Station Director Kira Okonkwo stood at the central console, her dark skin looking almost purple in the emergency lighting. She was speaking rapidly into multiple communicators, her voice rising with each unsuccessful attempt. "All channels are dead," she said when she saw James. "Internal communications, external transmissions, everything. We're completely cut off." "How is that possible?" James asked. "We have systems from 12 different species. They can't all fail simultaneously." "They didn't fail." Kira pulled up a diagnostic screen. "They were shut down. Someone or something accessed our core systems and killed every communication array we have." A chill ran down James's spine. "The defenses?" "Also offline. Shields, weapons, everything." Kira's hands trembled slightly as she worked. "Whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing. They hit us surgically, taking out our ability to call for help or defend ourselves without damaging the archive itself." "Who would do this?" "The archive is neutral territory. Attacking it would unite every species in the galaxy against." "Look." Kira pointed at the main view screen. James looked and felt his blood turn to ice. Ships. Hundreds of them, appearing out of nowhere as they dropped out of faster-than-light travel. They were unlike anything in the archive's database, sleek, black vessels that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. No identification markers. No communication signals. Just silent, deadly intent. "Send out an emergency beacon," James said. Any frequency that still works. Someone needs to know. I've been trying. Kira's voice broke slightly. Nothing's getting through. Whatever they're using to block us, it's technology we've never seen before. The unknown fleet began to surround the station. James counted at least 300 vessels, with more still arriving. This wasn't a raid. This was an invasion force. All personnel to emergency stations, Kira announced over the station's internal speakers. This is not a drill. Unknown hostile forces are approaching. Prepare for possible boarding. The staff scrambled to obey, but James knew it was futile. The archive had minimal security, it had never needed more. They were researchers, librarians, historians. Not soldiers. A voice suddenly crackled through the speakers. It was distorted, artificial, speaking in a language the translation software struggled to process. Archive station. Your resistance is irrelevant. Your defenses are neutralized. Surrender your collection, and your lives will be spared. Kira grabbed a microphone. This is Station Director Okonkwo. The archive is neutral territory under Galactic Treaty. You have no right. Treaties mean nothing to the dead. The voice was cold, emotionless. You have 1 hour to evacuate non-essential personnel. After that, we begin extraction. Resist, and we will take what we want from your wreckage. The channel went silent. James and Kira stared at each other. The archive contained the accumulated knowledge of 47 civilizations spanning millions of years. If these attackers took it, they would have access to technology, history, strategic information, everything needed to dominate the galaxy. We have to destroy it, James whispered. What? The archive. We have to destroy it before they can take it. It's the only way. Kira shook her head violently. That's 3,000 years of knowledge. Everything we've worked for. Everything humanity has built. Better destroyed than used as a weapon. James was surprised by the certainty in his own voice. We both know what's in those files. Military technology from every major power. Strategic data. Vulnerabilities. In the wrong hands. The self-destruct requires authorization from at least 5 department heads, Kira interrupted. And even if we could get it, where would we go? We have 3,000 people on this station. The evacuation ships can't outrun a fleet that size. James thought frantically. She was right. Even if they destroyed the archive, the staff would be slaughtered or captured. And these unknown attackers clearly had superior technology. Any distress call would arrive too late. Unless. The emergency protocol, James said suddenly. The one in the restricted files. Kira's eyes widened. That's just a theory. It's never been tested. Then maybe it's time. The Forbidden Protocol. 50 years ago, when the archive was first being designed, the human engineers had included a contingency plan that was so controversial it had nearly caused humanity's expulsion from the Galactic Council. It was a single-use system that would send out a distress call across every known frequency simultaneously, burning through enough power to be detected across the entire galaxy. The catch, it would also send the location of every inhabited world in the database directly to whoever was listening. The other species had been horrified. You would tell every pirate, every warlord, every hostile force exactly where to find us? The Zalthani representative had demanded. Only if there was no other choice, Ambassador Chen had replied. Only if the archive itself was threatened. Because if someone is attacking the repository of all our knowledge, then the galaxy is already at war, whether we know it yet or not. The protocol had been buried deep in the restricted systems, locked behind authorization codes known only to a handful of people. The theory was that if the archive was ever attacked, the emergency broadcast would bring help from every civilization simultaneously. Safety in numbers. But no one had ever actually tried it. We don't even know if anyone would respond, Kira said. They might decide we're not worth the risk. Or they might surprise us. James was already moving toward the restricted terminal. Either way, we're out of options. In 45 minutes, those ships start boarding. We need to give the galaxy a chance to stop them. He entered his authorization code. Kira hesitated, then entered hers. 3 more department heads were summoned and briefed in hurried whispers. One by one, they added their codes to the system. The terminal came alive with warnings. Red text scrolled across the screen listing all the terrible things that could happen if they activated the protocol. James ignored them all and placed his hand on the final authorization scanner. For the record, Kira said quietly, "This is either the bravest or stupidest thing humans have ever done." "Probably both," James agreed. He pressed the button. The message that shook the stars. The archive's remaining power reserves poured into the transmission array. Every antenna, every relay, every communication device on the station activated simultaneously. The distress call went out in all directions, burning across space like a supernova of information. It contained everything: the attack, the unknown fleet, the station's location, and, most importantly, the locations of every world that had contributed to the archive. If these attackers wanted knowledge, now everyone in the galaxy knew they were here. "Help us," the message said in 47 languages. "Or watch as everything we've built together burns." On the command deck of the lead attack ship, Commander Vex of the Shadow Syndicate smiled. The Syndicate had been planning this raid for decades, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The archive was the greatest prize in the galaxy, knowledge was power, and they were about to possess it all. "The distress call has been detected, Commander," his communications officer reported. "Multiple civilizations will have received it." "Let them," Vex said dismissively. "By the time they mobilize and debate and finally decide to act, we'll be gone. The galaxy's weakness is their endless talking. We take action. Should we begin boarding?" "Yes. Take the station intact if possible. If they resist, kill the staff. The data is what matters." The boarding ships launched from the fleet. 300 vessels moved toward the helpless archive, their weapons armed, their soldiers ready. Vex watched the station grow larger on his screens. In an hour, maybe 2, the Syndicate would possess 3,000 years of accumulated knowledge. They would learn the secrets of every major civilization. They would have the tools to become unstoppable. He was still smiling when space tore open behind him, the answer no one expected. When humanity remembered. The ship that emerged from faster-than-light travel was old. Ancient, even by galactic standards. Its hull was scarred from 1,000 battles, its weapons outdated, its design crude compared to modern vessels. It was a human colony ship from the first wave of expansion, nearly 500 years old. The UENS Pathfinder had been exploring the far reaches of the galaxy when the archive's distress call reached them. Captain Maria Santos was 87 years old. She had spent her entire life in space, watching humanity grow from nervous newcomers to established members of the galactic community. She had seen peace and she had seen war. What she saw now made her blood boil. "Tactical analysis," she ordered. Her tactical officer, a young man named Chen, no relation to the ambassador, though he was proud to share her name, studied his screens. 300 hostile vessels surrounding the archive. They're preparing to board. Our sensors show the station's defenses are offline. How many people on the archive? 3,000, Captain. Most of them civilians. Researchers, librarians, families. Maria's jaw tightened. The archive was humanity's greatest contribution to the galaxy. It represented everything humans believed in, that knowledge was worth preserving, that memory mattered, that the wisdom of the past should guide the future. And someone was trying to destroy all of that. "How long until the nearest military fleet arrives?" she asked. "The Korthan Empire's nearest battle group is 6 hours away. The Zalthani Defense Force is 8 hours out. Everyone else is even further. 6 hours. In 6 hours, the archive would be stripped clean or destroyed. 3,000 people would be dead or captured." Maria looked at her crew. 73 people on a ship that was ancient even by human standards. They had no chance against a fleet of 300 modern warships. "Captain," her first officer said quietly. "We should wait for reinforcements." "That's protocol." "Protocol," Maria repeated. She thought about Ambassador Chen standing before the Galactic Council, promising to build a place where nothing would be forgotten. She thought about Dr. Reeves and the thousands of other people who had dedicated their lives to preserving knowledge. "Do you know what humanity's real protocol is?" Maria asked her crew. "Our actual protocol, the one we've followed since we first climbed out of the caves and looked at the stars?" Her crew waited. "We show up," Maria said simply. "When someone needs help, we show up. We might be late. We might be outmatched. We might be the only ones willing to come. But we show up." She turned to her tactical officer. "Chen, are our weapons operational?" "Yes, Captain, but—" "Helm, plot an intercourse course for the enemy fleet. Maximum speed." "Captain," her first officer objected, "that's suicide. We can't possibly." "I'm not asking you to fight 300 ships," Maria interrupted. "I'm asking you to buy time. 6 hours. That's all those people need. 6 hours until the cavalry arrives." She looked around her bridge at the faces of her crew. Young and old, human and a few aliens who had chosen to serve on human ships. All of them knew what she was asking. All of them understood the odds. "I won't order you to follow me," Maria said. "This isn't a military vessel. You're explorers, not soldiers. Anyone who wants to stand down can do so now. No shame, no consequences." She waited. Not a single person moved. Chen spoke first. "My great-grandfather helped build the archive, Captain. He gave his whole life to it. I'm not letting some pirates destroy his legacy." "My sister works in the archive's biology section," another crew member added. "I'm not leaving her." One by one, the crew declared their intentions. Every single person chose to stay. Maria felt tears threatening but pushed them back. There would be time for emotion later. If there was a later. "All hands, battle stations," she announced. "We're going to war. 1 against 300. The Pathfinder accelerated toward the enemy fleet. On paper, it was absurd, a single ancient colony ship charging a force 300 times its size. The smart move was to wait, to hide, to let others handle it. But humans had never been very good at the smart move. Commander Vex noticed the approaching ship on his sensors and almost laughed. "What is that? Some kind of joke?" "It's a human colony vessel, sir. 500 years old. Armed with primitive railguns and nuclear missiles." "One ship?" Vex shook his head in disbelief. "Destroy it. Don't waste time on a threat that insignificant." 10 Shadow Syndicate vessels broke formation and moved to intercept the Pathfinder. They were faster, better armed, with shields that could shrug off anything the old ship could throw at them. They expected an easy kill. What they got was a lesson in human creativity. The Pathfinder didn't fight like a military vessel. It fought like a colony ship crewed by people who had spent 500 years learning to survive in the deadliest environment in the universe, deep space. When the enemy ships opened fire, the Pathfinder didn't try to dodge. Instead, it released its entire cargo bay, 300 containers filled with everything from mining equipment to frozen food. The containers scattered across space, creating a cloud of debris that scattered the enemy's targeting systems. When the enemy ships tried to pursue through the cloud, the Pathfinder detonated a series of shaped charges, turning the containers into shrapnel that tore through their hulls. 2 enemy ships were destroyed immediately. 3 more were damaged and fell back. "What was that?" Vex demanded. "They're using improvised weapons, sir. Nothing in any tactical database. Because they're not military." Vex slammed his fist on the console. "They're civilians. Send 20 ships. No, 30. Overwhelm them with numbers." 30 vessels broke formation and descended on the Pathfinder. Captain Santos watched them come. Chen, are the mining charges ready? Yes, Captain. But they were designed for asteroid excavation, not combat. Then let's hope these pirates have similar density. She smiled grimly. Fire on my mark. The mining charges had been designed to crack open asteroids for resource extraction. They focused all their explosive force into a narrow beam that could split rock like a hot knife through butter. Against military shields, they would have been useless. But the Shadow Syndicate ships weren't expecting them. The first charge punched through a destroyer's shields and hull, splitting it in half. The second took out a cruiser's engine section. The third, fourth, and fifth created a chain reaction that destroyed 7 ships in rapid succession. The remaining enemy vessels scattered in confusion. On the archive, Dr. Reeves watched the battle through the station's sensors, hardly believing what he was seeing. They're buying us time, he whispered. That ship is 500 years old, Kira said, equally amazed. It shouldn't even be able to hurt them. It's not about the ship. James couldn't take his eyes off the display. It's about the crew. They're fighting with everything they have, not because they're strong, but because they refuse to give up. The Pathfinder danced through space, using every trick in the book and several that hadn't been written yet. They vented atmosphere to create thrust for emergency maneuvers. They used their cargo tethers to catch enemy missiles and fling them back. They even rammed one ship when they ran out of other options, trading hull damage for a kill. But there were limits to what creativity could achieve. After an hour, the Pathfinder was falling apart. Her hull was breached in 17 places. Her engines were running at 40% capacity. Half her crew was dead or wounded. Captain Santos had a piece of shrapnel embedded in her shoulder and refused to have it treated. Captain, Chen said quietly, we can't take much more. How long have we lasted? 1 hour, 17 minutes. Then we last longer. Maria's voice was steel. Those people are counting on us. Commander Vex had stopped smiling. This single human ship had destroyed 43 of his vessels. 43. His crews were terrified, refusing to engage the ancient colony ship that fought like a demon. All ships, he ordered, his voice tight with rage. Focus fire on that vessel. I want it obliterated. Now. 257 warships turned their weapons on the Pathfinder. There was no escape. No clever trick that could save them. Maria Santos looked at her crew, at Chen still working his console with a broken arm, at her first officer who had burns across half his face, at every brave soul who had chosen to stay. It's been an honor, she said simply. The enemy fleet fired. And space tore open. The galaxy arrives. They came from every direction. The Korthan Empire's battle fleet, early by 2 hours because they had burned their engines past safety limits. The Zalthani Defense Force, emerging from a shortcut through a gravity well that was considered impossible to navigate. The Villani Peace Armada. The Trithan Guard. The Kolari Rangers. 47 species. 3,000 ships. Every civilization that had contributed to the archive, responding to humanity's desperate call. They had been enemies. They had fought wars against each other. Some still had active disputes and territorial conflicts. But the message had been clear, help us, or watch as everything we've built together burns. And they had come. The Shadow Syndicate fleet was caught completely off guard. In seconds, they went from overwhelming victory to being outnumbered 10-1. Commander Vex tried to order a retreat, but it was too late. The combined Galactic fleet fell on the Syndicate like an avalanche. The battle lasted 12 minutes. When it was over, not a single Syndicate ship remained intact. The Pathfinder drifted in space, barely functional, her crew exhausted and wounded. They had lasted 1 hour and 37 minutes against an impossible enemy. It had been enough. A Korthan battleship moved alongside them, its massive bulk dwarfing the ancient colony vessel. The Korthan commander's face appeared on Maria's cracked view screen. Human vessel Pathfinder, he said, his voice filled with what might have been respect. "You have fought with honor. Do you require assistance?" Maria laughed. It hurt her shoulder, but she couldn't help it. "Yes, please. And maybe a tow. I think we broke something important." Epilogue: What they learned. 2 weeks later, Dr. James Reeves stood in the archive's main hall. The repairs were underway, and life was slowly returning to normal. But something had changed, something fundamental. Representatives from all 47 species had gathered for a ceremony. They stood together, species that barely tolerated each other, united by what they had witnessed. Captain Maria Santos, her arm in a sling, stood at the front. She looked uncomfortable with all the attention. "We have debated for 3,000 years about humanity's place in our galaxy," the Zalthani ambassador said. "We questioned whether such a young species deserved a voice in our councils. Whether their ideas had merit. Whether their contributions were valuable." He paused, looking at Maria and her crew. "We will debate no more. Humanity has proven what matters most, not age, not technology, not power. But the willingness to stand when others fall. To fight when victory seems impossible. To show up when everyone else stays away." He turned to address the assembled representatives. "From this day forward, the archive will have a new guardian species. Humanity will be given permanent authority over its protection, with full command of its defenses." There was a murmur of surprise, but no objections. "Some may ask why we honor one crew of one ship," the ambassador continued. "After all, we came with thousands of vessels. Our forces saved the archive." He looked directly at Maria Santos. "But you arrived first. When it was most dangerous. When the odds were impossible. You bought us the time we needed with nothing but courage and creativity. That is worth more than all our fleets combined." Later, after the ceremony, James found Maria looking at the memorial wall they had erected. 37 names were carved there, the crew members who had died defending the archive. "They'll be remembered forever," James said softly. "Just like everyone else whose name is recorded here." Maria nodded. "That's what humans do. We remember. We preserve. We show up when others won't." She looked at him with tired eyes. "Just promise me something, Dr. Reeves." "Anything. Make sure the next generation knows why we did this. Not for glory. Not for reward. But because some things are worth fighting for. Worth dying for. And knowledge, the wisdom of the past, the hope for the future, that's one of those things." James promised. And 500 years later, when the archive was the largest station in the galaxy, when 50 new species had joined and contributed their own histories, when countless crises had been averted by the wisdom preserved in its halls, people still told the story. They told of the day the archive was attacked. The day the galaxy learned what humanity meant when they promised to protect knowledge. The day one ancient ship held the line against impossible odds because someone needed help and they had shown up. That was humanity's real gift to the galaxy, not technology, not resources, not even the archive itself. It was the simple, stubborn, beautiful insistence that when someone calls for help, you answer.